Hello and welcome to Ari Faye's Operation Floodgate Resto Druid Tips, Tricks, and Kicks commentary video. We're going to hop right in with the first trash pull of the dungeon. Healing on the first pull is a little odd, so I'm going to go ahead and review my approach before I review the mobs here. So I do let the tank charge in without hitting anything. First thing I do is touch the tank up with a life bloom and a rejuve, and then I keep an eye out for that Dispel that is on the tank as other damage starts to go out. I do start to rejuve others and add my life blooms in addition to my efflorescence. Keep an awareness of the tank and the Dispel dot that he has on him. There is going to be kind of some burst damage in this first pull. The Shredinator is immune to CC, and it spawns those saw blades under every player. I like to stand in a position where the saw blades that are spawned under my feet are going to stay out of the way of melee and the tank. Just move out of the way of them and you'll take very little damage. It will also point a conal at the tank, so just be aware of your positioning. There is also, in that first pull, a Venture Co. Surveyor. The Surveyor will channel a beam onto a random player. It is important for that to be interrupted. You can use your in-cap roar to interrupt it, or you can use your Skull Bash. And then there's also some darkfuse soldiers. Those are the ones that apply the magic dot to the tank. There are some loader bots in this pull. Those wind up and they fixate a random player, so it is helpful to avoid being in melee for this pull if you can. Coming into this next pull, I do always hope that I'm going to have Iron Bark back up. There is a new mob called the Darkfuse Hyena. The tank has to be careful about the amount of hyenas they pull together because they buff each other. You can interrupt the Bloodthirsty Cackle, but it's really not as important. You can also soothe the hyena once it has cackled as a druid, but honestly they do not do that much damage in my opinion. I would focus more on healing and DPSing than worrying about the hyenas. My tank also pulled a bombshell crab there. You don't want to kill too many of those mobs at once because they do a crab explosion on death and will do some party-wide damage. In this pull, we have another new mob called the Venture Co. Architect. This mob is immune to CC, and they will also use a ability called Nail Gun, which will cause a bleed and have a root effect. If you are nailed to the floor, you can use cat form to get out of that root. This mob also pulls a Fortnite and builds scaffolding. The DPS will need to destroy the scaffolding before they can DPS the architect.
Watch your step.
You also might have seen in that poll that there was another surveyor, so just be aware of that CC that needs to happen. We also had pulled some divers. We'll run into more divers across the way, but the divers cast Harpoon, pulling you in. You have to be very careful about your positioning when the tank pulls divers because they do plant a Sephorium charge underneath them, and if you are harpooned and that is not interrupted, you could be pulled into a bomb. Be careful about interrupting the harpoonists because your interrupt requires you to jump in. If there happens to be a bomb where that mob is standing, you are just going to explode upon interrupt.
Watch your step. Watch your step. Watch your step. Watch your step.
When handling all of the burst damage in this dungeon, I just try and have usually a rejuve on everybody at least, for the most part. And then I will see somebody taking extra damage, add a life bloom and a germination, and then do one of three things. Swift mend into regrowth for a burst heal. Nature's Swiftness into a regrowth for a burst heal. Or, if both Nature's Swiftness and Swift Mend are off cooldown, I would recommend spamming Regrowth. That is a sort of like philosophy and approach that I also use for the Demolition duo.
Watch your step. Frontal. Frontal. Watch your step. Watch your step. Frontal. Frontal. Watch your step. Watch your step. Frontal. Frontal.
I do start with a Germination and Regrowth on everybody. For the Dispel, I take a look at where the bombs have spawned, and I try to position myself where if I got the first Dispel, that I could immediately Dispel myself. The Dispel is a ability called Kinetic Explosive Gel, which applies a magic dot to a random player, and it explodes when the player is dispelled. So it also does damage. But we as the healer are so squishy that if you do not Dispel almost immediately, you are going to die. If you get that Dispel and you're not in a good position, I would recommend using a bark skin and then Dispelling, or you could turn into a bear if you have Ursine's Vigor. You can Dispel yourself. The Dispel will stab you out of bear form, but Ursine's Vigor will give you that extra stamina and armor that you need to survive that Dispel. As you can see, I am peppering my Nature's Swiftness into Regrowths and my Swift Mend into Regrowths and just general spamming Regrowth throughout this boss. I'm moving my Light Blooms around liberally, and I'm having a special awareness about where I'm located on the arena. If you're having trouble healing and you need some backup help, I would suggest using Convoke there, or you can use a DPS Convoke on that boss to cover some of the damage. I do want to mention that that boss does have a barreling charge, where Bront does a series of 3 charges, 2 at random players, and then the last at the tank, and then it ends with another Dispel. The last Dispel should be used to get any bombs that are left.
Frontal. Target you.
Now we come back to this area. We wanted to use Lust on Big Mommy here, and that's why we ended up doing her as the second boss in this dungeon. Here you'll see the new addition of snipers, as well as inspectors, and the darkfuse demolitionist. The darkfuse demolitionist will use his RPGG to launch a volley of rockets, and this can be CC'd using your in-cap roar. The inspectors will jump around and try and jump behind ranged players. You can put your vortex down to kind of help with that. Of course, it will only help for like the first time that they try and do it. But if you're going to put your vortex down, I would recommend putting your vortex down and putting yourself far away so that you are targeted by the inspector. And that way, you become the target. If the pollen is too close to where the inspector is going to jump to, then the vortex doesn't work as well. The sniper is going to go ahead and cast Trick Shot, which just targets a random player. You can also interrupt that.
Frontal. Watch your step. Frontal. Frontal.
So the Big Mama boss fight has two phases, one where she calls down a series of ads, and another phase where all of the ads are dead. In the first phase, the Mecha Drones cast Maximum Distortion, which you absolutely should make sure is interrupted. You can use your Skull Bash on that, and the DPS should help with the interrupts. Otherwise, my recommendation is to approach these damage patterns with constantly having rejuves out, germinations out, and maintaining those two on every person, and then moving your life bloom around to whoever is taking the burst damage. Your group will need to kill all of the Mechadrone ads, and then once those Mechadrone ads are gone, the boss will enter the burn phase called Jumpstart. During Jumpstart, everybody is going to take extremely heavy damage, and that's when you're going to want to make sure that you have every rejuve out, every germination out, and then life bloom as well on the squishiest targets. The boss will enter Jumpstart, and then you can use your Convoke, and then you will continue to maintain your hots on everybody. Once Convoke has completed, my recommendation is to spot regrowth everybody, and as you are continuing to maintain your hots, do a Swiftmend into Wild Growth. On high keys, I would go ahead and save your Barkskin for about halfway through the Jumpstart phase, and that will help you survive the second half of that phase. I also want to mention that Big Mama will cast Sonic Boom on individual players. You can bait that towards the center, and that way DPS and the tank can continue to do their jobs on the side of Big Mama. I like to use my bear form in that moment, just in case I take some extra damage, because the Sonic Boom can do a little bit of damage to you.
Killads.
After Big Mama is dead, sit down, drink some mana. The pack over here is a Blood Warper pack. We did not hit it in this dungeon. We typically skip it because there is like a little skip spot where you can stand and pilfer those stockpiles without triggering the Blood Warper pack over there. But I do want to go ahead and mention the Blood Warper pack because before the dungeon I always tell the tank as we're going up the stairs towards the Blood Warper, please wait to pull the pack until I have full mana and move into that pack slowly so I can hot everybody up.
Enrage.
This pack does require everybody to have, at the very beginning of the Blood Warper's cast, to have a rejuve on everybody, a germination on everybody,
Watch your step.
your life blooms on 2 of the squishiest targets, and you might
Watch
even
your
want to
step.
pepper in a couple regrowths as the demolitionist is calling in those big circles with its volley of rockets. The Blood Warper is casting Warp Blood, and it is a heal absorb that must be healed off. If you have a bark skin up, I would try and save it if you can for the second round of the Blood Warper. The Blood Warper is going to probably do at least 2 rounds of the Blood Warp, so you want to maintain those rejuves and germinations as that is going off. And spot heal with some regrowths. You can add in your cooldown of Convoke for the first one if you have it up. If you don't have that up, you can use Tranquility, and then you can use Convoke. And then if the Blood Warper is still up, which hope to Azeroth gods that Blood Warper is dead halfway through this third one, because we have almost no tools to deal with a third round of that. Just before the third boss, usually the tank will pull Kelps. Disturbed Kelps do cast something called Jettison Kelp. It causes big party-wide damage. Here is where it is great for you to help use your in-cap roar. Try not to overlap it with the tank. The tank will probably use his CC first. Then you could use yours, and then somebody else could use theirs, or hopefully there is some others who have some CC that they can use to help. If there's nothing else available, you can put your Vortex down, and then you could use your Typhoon and blow. And that will interrupt the Kelps from their Jettison Kelp, which causes heavy damage, but also it will interrupt their restorative algae and prevent them from healing. A solid pull of the Disturbed Kelps with everybody using their CC correctly without overlapping will mean absolutely no damage on anybody going out. Now, Swampface is going to, again, require that sort of maximization of the abundance talent to be used. You're going to want to make sure you have your rejuves on everybody, your germinations on everybody, and thank God, as the healer, you are not strapped to another person unless somebody dies. At the beginning of the season, it was random, and you used to get strapped to somebody, which was really annoying, especially when you have to regrowth everybody, because that's basically what I use to help heal that phase. I maintain my rejuves, maintain my germinations, and do some big regrowthing on people, or I'll use a swift mend into a wild growth in order to help heal that phase, or I will use my Convoke. Throughout this fight, Swampface is going to put a debuff of Razor Choke Vines, which is going to deal dot damage for 24 seconds, binding them to another player, which is typically why you see the healer not taking quite as much damage as a DPS. And then they are going to be tied together trying to dodge all those waves. The tank does take a big tank buster at the very beginning, which you are going to want to be aware of. Try and help heal them up after that tank buster goes out. The tank buster is called Sludge Claws. Try and rotate through using your Convoke in your maximization of the Abundance talent. You can also burst heal people here, in addition to your rejuves and germinations, with the Swift Mend into a regrowth if they happen to get hit by a wave, or a Nature Swiftness into a regrowth. Usually I don't take that much damage on that fight. I end up going through almost all of my mana though. While this boss is dying, I thought I'd tell a short story of earlier in the season. A DPS just got absolutely wrecked by one of the waves that went out. And after the waves were clear, he still didn't take the res, and I was like, that's weird. He was waiting for me to get connected to another player so he could DPS without the vines. If you are a DPS, do not do that, okay? There is big dam that I need to heal, that I need to be able to position myself to do regrowths with. If I get connected to a melee DPS, and I am having to stand in melee where all the waves are going, and heal, you are making my job very difficult, okay? So please don't be like the paladin. I know you all are healers, but some of you have alts, and I'm just saying that kind of stuff is very hurtful to Resto Druids, okay? Anyways.
Watch your step.
Bubbles is another one that you might run into. We actually are doing a bubbles skip here, but my recommendation would be to handle Bubbles AoE in the same way as you handled Swampface's AoE.
Watch your step. Frontal.
People are always worried about where I'm standing on this fight. I don't know why. They think I'm gonna pull that big guy behind on the staircase. I'm not gonna pull the big guy up behind on the staircase, okay? He's sleeping. The only way he'll wake up is if I literally stand on top of him. But it's fine. In this pack, you'll see some of the inspectors. You could put your vortex down again to help make sure that they're pulled back in. There is a new mob called the Venture Co. Electrician. Make sure you keep lightning bolts interrupted as much as possible. There is going to be a Dispel from the Electrician called Overcharge, which does a magic dot, so just try and dispel that quickly. And otherwise, this is a pretty easy mob to heal. You can do some DPS.
Frontal. Frontal.
This group over here with some inspectors and some electricians. Sometimes tanks pull that group over to this new mob type called the darkfuse jumpstarter. In this poll, there's only one. In the one following, there's 2 jump starters. Now you can use your vortex here again with the inspectors and go ahead and make sure that you are dispelling and keeping the electrician interrupted. This is kind of a chaotic poll, but just some rejuves and germinations and a life bloom out on the squishy targets and a regrowth here and there is going to get you through the first one. The second one is a little bit more challenging, I would say. Just one more story time while this jumpstarter is taking forever to die. I had a tank earlier in the season who did this crazy thing, which is to pull the one jumpstarter into the double jumpstarter. Needless to say, we were all wiped. Our tunes, guts, smeared across the floor. Sorry if that's gory. Oh, he said, oh, that pull is illegal over 12s, but this is a 10, so I thought I'd try it. No! The answer is no, do not do that. That is a bad pull, okay? You know, I get the inspector's pull with the single jump starter. That I can handle. But pulling triple jump starter is illegal, okay? There is no circumstance where triple jump starter is a legal pull. And here's the reason why. There is a tank buster that is on the tank, and it will just nuke you. If you're a tank and you're listening to this, do not get nuked by triple jump starter. Do not get tricked by the dream of pulling trash that is far too big for you. Okay? Only pull what you can survive. Anyways. Just use the same strategies that I recommended for Big Mama. Just pray that the DPS are focusing one of the jump starters so that you only eventually have to deal with one. Now, on a high key like a 16, you're definitely going to want to have your Convoke up for the start of the Giesel Gigazap fight. Or if you don't have it up, make sure the tank waits for you to rejuve everybody and germinate everyone and have your life blooms up before pulling the boss. That big AoE, called Turbocharge, is going to go out and cause big party-wide damage. On a smaller key, you probably could get away with not using your Convoke and just making use of your abundance talent. But on a high key, you absolutely need rejuves on everybody, germinations on everybody, and you also need your life blooms out in addition to stacking your Convoke. A party-wide defensive from a DPS is also very helpful in that phase. If you could bring a DK who has AMC or a mage who has a barrier, that can also help on a high key. The Gigazap is going to go out on 2 people.
Defensive.
You are going to want to make sure you have life blooms on them. Definitely save your bark skin for that moment. You are not going to need your iron bark for it, so as long as there is a total of 3 DPS, because the first 2 will go out on 2 people, and then the second 2 will always go out on the 2 who have not gotten it. So there you saw me and the Warlock get it, and because there are 2 other people who can get it there, the Mage and the DK got it. The DK actually used one of his abilities to just completely get rid of the dot, but I did have to heal the Mage through that. Now, when you are healing that dot, definitely make sure you have your Rejuve, Germination, and Life Bloom up on the 2 people who are getting that heavy damage.
AoE incoming. Stay away from lines.
Mr. Gigazap is also going to summon some sparks that chase you, you need to drag your spark through to a puddle. Now, you want to make sure that the puddle that you drag your spark into is not close to where the tank is tanking the boss. We don't want to steal the tank's puddles, so try and draw your spark further away to a puddle that is much further from the tank. There's no way he would even want that puddle. So that way, we are making sure the tank is able to take his knockback in a position that is good for him. Another thing to note is that you do have Iron Bark that you can also use on this fight. If a DPS seems like they didn't have a defensive they could use for that big dot, or if you don't have a defensive because maybe you used it for the AoE and panic, then you can use Iron Bark on yourself or another DPS. Thank you so much for watching RFA's Operation Floodgate, Resto Druid, Tips, Tricks, and Kicks video. Hopefully I showed you how you could use some of your toolkit to survive Operation Floodgate.